الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. صلوا على رسول الله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد صلاة تفتح لنا أبواب الرضا والتيسير وتغلق بها عنا أبواب الشر وتعسير. أنت مولانا فنعم المولى ونعم النصير. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا طيبا وعملا صالحا متقبلا يا رب العالمين. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to benefit from the knowledge of Al-Imam An-Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi and to shower him with mercy, ya Rabb. Last class we spoke about Al-Isti'adha. Today we speak about Basmala. What's Basmala? To say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This is called in Arabic An-Naht. It's called An-Naht. I see it. It's just a little paper. It's called An-Naht. Just as you would say Hamdala, what's Hamdala? Alhamdulillah. Hawqala, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Hayfala, hayya ala al-falah. Hayya ala al-salah. There's also Dam'aza. Who knows Dam'aza? Adamullahu izzak. Talbaqa, atalallahu baqa'ak. It's called An-Naht, where they shorten the phrase into one word, so it's easy to it comes off of the tongue. Instead of talking about Bismillah, every time you want to talk about the Basmala, you would say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim means this. Bismillah, just Basmala, Alhamdulillah, or Hawqala. So some of the du'as, some of the mashayikh they would say Dam'azak Allah wa talbaqak. It means Adamullahu izzaka wa atanallahu baqa'ak. But a person who doesn't know what this means, they're going to be like, hey, what are you saying to me? You're cursing me or what? But Dam'azak Allah wa talbaqak is actually a dua that you would make for someone. Again, it's called An-Naht fi al-Lugha al-Arabiya. Before I go into Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim and what Imam An-Nawawi mentioned, what does Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim mean? Ba over here is for isti'ana. You're seeking help and aid from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ba. And ba anytime, harful jar, da'iman yufid al-ilsaq, meaning there's a connection here. Okay, so every time you do something, you start something, you're saying, I don't want to start, I'm not going to start unless I'm connected to who? The rope of Allah Azza wa Jal, unless I'm connected to Allah and getting His help. And that is why it's very fitting that ba over here is used and yufidul ilsaq, like I mentioned, because there's many ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he says anything that you begin that doesn't begin with the name of Allah, then it is void and cut off from barakah, aqta'. It's cut off and void from barakah. So when you don't say Bismillah and you eat, there's no barakah in the food. When you don't say Bismillah and start something, there is no barakah. So we always start with Bismillah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So with the name of Allah, Al-Ism, if you look back into the language of what Ism goes back to, it could come back to As-Sumu, which means Al-Irtifa' or Dhuhur. When I mention your name in a way, in a sense, I'm praising you. Like, Brother Shariful is Islam. This is your name, you're happy with it, you're praised with it. This is something that your parents gave you, and tafrah. Okay? And also, I don't have to say, oh, there is this uncle, he's 5'10", and he has this quality. I say his name, everyone understands? So when you say Bismillah with the name of who? Allah Azza wa Jal. Is there anyone else named Allah? Astaghfirullah al-Azim. Only Allah is Allah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. What's the difference between ar-Rahman and ar-Rahim? Ar-Rahman ala wazn fa'lan. Yadullu ala al-imtila. It's full, but it's not correct to say Allah is full of mercy. You would say Allah is the most merciful. So when you say a person is ghadban or za'lan or shab'an, when I say I'm full, khalas, there's no space to eat. Or when you say someone is angry, you say ghadban, because he's fuming. It's as though smoke is coming out of his ears. Ghadban, just full of anger. So when you say Allah is Rahman, wa rahmati wasi'at kull shay. His mercy encompasses everything. He's Azza wa Jalla, the most merciful. And that's why, can you name anybody Rahman? Only Allah is Ar-Rahman. You can say Abdul-Rahman. Some people, they have Rahman as a last name. Is that correct? La. You have to have Abdul-Rahman. Having Rahman as a name by itself is not allowed. It has to be Abdul-Rahman. Rahim, is it only for Allah Azza wa Jal? No, because Allah says about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَؤُوفٌ Rahim. Rahim ala wazn fa'il. When I see someone is tawil or qasir, you're tall, you're short, it's something that is not going to change. It's a quality of you that is going to stay. So it shows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Rahim. He is always Rahim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always merciful. And they say that this Rahmah Rahim is specifically for the believers. So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rahman, Rahim, Fa'alan, Fa'il. There's no way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would just repeat it in a different form without giving it a different meaning. I covered today in Fajr Quran, Allah says Ghafoor and Ghaffar. Ghafoor and Ghaffar. What's the difference? When you say Akul and Akkal. Akkal is someone who eats wajba after wajba. He keeps eating. Akkal. So when you say Allah is Ghaffar, He forgives. When you say Ghafoor, Akul, yuhibbul akal hada. He loves to eat. So when you say Allah is Ghafoor, He loves to forgive. So you see how even the patterns of words affect the meaning of it. But let's go into the ahkam that Imam al-Nawawi mentioned. Okay? Tomorrow, inshallah, Fajr time tomorrow. Ghafoor is the one who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He loves to forgive. Allahu Ghafoor Rahim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to forgive. But going to Bismillah and Basmala now. Okay? So we don't go too long. One should take care to recite Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful and the compassionate, in the beginning of each chapter of the Quran, except for Surah Tawbah, Surah Bara'ah or Surah Tawbah. Why? I'll mention it. Most scholars consider, but should they say A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajim before starting Surah Tawbah? Yes. So you say A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajim, but you don't say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Again, I'm going to mention some more rulings and even the ikhtilaf of the Qurra and the different things in a moment. Most scholars consider the Basmala a verse of the Quran. Imam al-Nawawi, he's Shafi'i or Hanafi? He's Shafi'i. Do Shafi'is read Bismillah out loud? Yes. Why? Because they consider it a part of the surah. So they say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Qul a'udhu bi Rabbil Falaq. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Qul a'udhu bi Rabbin Nas. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Bara'ah? No. Nobody considers in Tawbah. So let me tell you where they agree and let me tell you where they disagree. They all agree that the ayah in Surah An-Naml, إِنَّهُ مِن سُلَيْمَانَ وَإِنَّهُ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ. Surah An-Naml. Is this ayah of Quran? Yes. Is Bismillah over here part of the Quran? No disagreement. No disagreement here. And there is no disagreement between amongst the scholars that in the beginning of Bara'ah there is no Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. There is no disagreement there. Where you will find disagreement amongst the scholars is in Surah Al-Fatiha. Is it a part of the Fatiha or is it not part of the Fatiha? Even those that say it's not part of the Fatiha, they still say you should recite it silently, like the Hanafi madhab. Okay? And so if it's not part of the Fatiha, Fatiha is described as Sab'ul Mathani. How many verses in Surah Al-Fatiha? 7. Everyone agrees on this, yes or no? Yes. So if Bismillah is considered an ayah according to some and not according to others, then those that don't consider it an ayah, then how do they calculate 7 ayahs? I'll tell you how. If Bismillah is an ayah, then صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ is 1 ayah. If Bismillah is not an ayah, then صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ ayah number 6. غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ ayah number 7. So according to all of them, Fatiha is how much? 7 ayahs, with just some of the disagreement. And then also, there is disagreement between the ulama, and I mentioned the Shafi'i madhab, that they do Bismillah in the beginning of each surah, is in the beginning of surahs. The beginning of Surah An-Nas, the beginning of Surah Al-Falaq. I'm giving these examples because these surahs are easy and we all know it. Okay? Is it Bismillah part of the surah or not part of the surah? And even if it's not part of the surah, are we supposed to recite it? Yes. Just because it's not part of the surah itself, is it not something that's connected to the Quran that whenever you start something you say? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And a point I forgot to mention, when you say Bismillah in the name of Allah, it's as though there is a verb there that is hidden. It's as though you're saying, I begin with the name of Allah. I eat with the name of Allah. I read Quran or I start my recitation with the name of Allah. Imam al-Zamakhshari, he says that no, you shouldn't say it in this order. Because you're supposed to do taqdeem of the jar majroor حتى يفيد الاختصاص. So you're supposed to say, and you find many of the mufassirun and many of the ulama, they'll say, أبدأ بسم الله. No, it should be بسم الله أبدأ. Why? Because you're saying, all of these gods are nothing to me. Only with the name of Allah, I begin. So you're putting Allah first, and then your action. So even in the fi'l that's mahdoof over here, Zamakhshari, he aids the fact that you would say, Bismillahi abda'u, Bismillahi aqra'u. With the name of Allah, I recite. With the name of Allah, I eat. Instead of saying, I eat with the name of Allah. It just shows you that you're doing it for none other than Allah Azza wa Jal. And again, so going back to the issue of the Bismillah, when do you recite it, when do you not recite it? This goes back to the issue of the qira'at. And this is something that Shaykh Abdullah Shinqiti, one of my teachers, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him shifa, say Ameen. He mentioned that this mas'ala tarji'u ila ikhtilaf al-qurra. This mas'ala is not a fiqhi issue all the way. It's an issue that goes back to the qira'at and the qurra itself. There's a narration where Imam Malik, this is mentioned in the Nashr by Ibn al-Jazari, he said that Imam Malik, he asked Imam Nafi'. Imam Nafi' was the qari with which riwayat? Qalun and Warsh. Okay? Imam Nafi' was asked by Imam Malik about the basmala. And then Imam Nafi' responded that the sunnah is to recite it out loud. A sunnah al-jahr. And then Imam Malik, what did he say? كُلُّ عِلْمٍ يُسْأَلُ عَنْهُ أَهْلُهُ. Every field of knowledge, every expertise, you ask the people of the expertise. You want to ask about hadith, you go to the faqih or you go to the muhaddith? You want to ask about a fiqh issue, do you go to a person whose specialty is in tariq? You go to the faqih. You want to ask about Quran, you go to the specialist in Quran. This is how knowledge is. So Imam Malik, there was this narration about him when he said that. But to the issue of the recitation with basmala and without not basmala, what all of the qurra they agree upon, okay, is that when you start, you must read basmala. When you start, you must read basmala. This is what all of them agree upon. I'm telling you what all of the opinions are, okay? When you recite, you must start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. If you stop and then start again, you're supposed to say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. If you breathe and you're taking a break and then you go back, you're supposed to say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This is what they agree upon. Between surahs, now there is disagreement between the qurra. There is disagreement and differences of opinion. I'm going to summarize it in the easiest way possible. Okay? The ways, by the way, you would combine two surahs. Let's give example of وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. The next surah is? Come on, guys. Juz Amma. أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ. أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ. أَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. Sukun. Right? So it's an easy way to show it to you. If you were to do it in the ways of the Qur'an, you would do either qat'ul jami' or waslul jami' or wasl ma'a awwal surah. I'll explain it by recitation. This is the easiest way to understand. وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. Pause. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Pause. أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدَرَكَ. Stopping on each one or connecting all of them. وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدَرَكَ. Okay, وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم. Connecting all of them. Or the last one, وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ. Connecting the Bismillah to the beginning of the surah. What you're not allowed to do and what is makruh is what? وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ. Connecting the Bismillah to the last surah, it's as though it's the ayah of the last surah, and then starting the new surah without the Bismillah. This is the only one that is not allowed. Everything else is allowed. So when it comes to between surahs, the ulama, the qurra that mentioned that you must read Basmala are the following. The one we recite, Asim, Kisa'i, Ibn Kathir, and Qalun. So 3.5. How much? 3.5. 3 qurra and one of the rawis. They say you have to do basmala between the surahs. Can you skip basmala between surahs? No. You have to You have to read the basmala. Again, let me ask you, do you have to read the basmala between surahs? You have to read the basmala between surahs. You have to read the surah between basmalas?
Yes.
You have to read the basmala between surahs. Again, just repeating it, because when you repeat something, it becomes very clear. Other qurra, you'll notice if you hear mishari in different qurra, when they recite, for example, in the recitation of Khalaf or Hamza in general, there is no basmala between the surahs. What does this mean? Meaning you connect the last surah with the next surah. How? وَمِنَ اللَّيْلِ فَسَبِّحْ وَإِدْبَارَ النُّجُومِ وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى. Directly connected to it. في مقعد صدق عند مليك مقتدر الرحمن. Directly to the next surah. وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ. Directly connected to the surah. There are exceptions. I'm going to mention the exceptions where even Hamza, you're not supposed to do it, because then the ma'na is not going to be good. That's the second one. The third one is the three that I mentioned before, Ibn Amir, Wash, Abu Amr, and then they add two more, that you connect it without basmala, as the one I just mentioned, and then you pause without basmala. So, وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ. Again, these are things, the only reason I'm mentioning that, you hear it once in your life, you'll know that look at all of the difference of opinion from amongst the scholars in even such an issue as basmala. Can you imagine? So, back to what I was saying, there are exceptions though, okay? Arba' al-Zuhr they mentioned, the surah of Qiyamah before it, which is Mudaththir, and Mutaffifin before it. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of Surah Al-Infitar, He says, وَالْأَمْرُ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلَّهِ. And the affair on that day is for who? Allah. The beginning of Mutaffifin is how? Wail. Woe to them. It's a كأنه وادي في جهنم. It's a dua, but it's from Allah Azza wa Jalla. It's going to happen. So is it appropriate to say وَالْأَمْرُ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلَّهِ وَيْلُ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ? It's not appropriate. So even in those qurra that say it, they say in these surahs, no. In these surahs, pause. In these surahs, do ithbat of the basmala. So Hamza over here, he would pause. He wouldn't connect it, because then the ma'na, the meaning of it, is not going to be connected from the last surah to this surah. Look how deep the Quran is. And the example they also give is Surah Al-Humazah, because that also begins with wail. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ وَيْلٌ. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Can you do that or no? Of course not, you see? So these are the exceptions that they mentioned. 4 surahs I mentioned, Qiyamah, Mutaffifin, Balad, and Humazah. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not put Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim in Surah At-Tawbah? The ulama mentioned 3 different reasons, okay? One of them is because the strength and the severity towards the disbelievers and the hypocrites, okay? And then also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Allah is disassociating Himself towards them. Bara'atun min Allahi wa rasulihi. So is this compatible with the mercy of Allah? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The surah begins with disassociation. Bara'atun min Allah. Allah has nothing to do with them. Is it appropriate to start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim? No. And another reason that was very unique mentioned, that Tawbah was revealed to annul treaties. And the Arab, whenever they would want to document and to confirm a treaty, they would start it with Bismillah. And if they wanted to annul a treaty, they wouldn't send it with Bismillah. So this is one of the reasons that was mentioned. So when it comes to Surah Tawbah, there's 3 ways of doing it. Wallahu bi kulli shay'in alimun bara'ah, connecting it. Or Wallahu bi kulli shay'in alim bara'ah, pause but without taking a breath. Third way, Wallahu bi kulli shay'in alim bara'ah. See? Connecting, small pause, and pause with a breath in between. If you are following the tartib, this is how you do it. Anfal to Tawbah. But let's say you go from Surah Al-Baqarah, you finish it, and then you go to Tawbah. What would you do? Then you would only pause. You wouldn't do the connection. Because how can you connect a surah when Allah didn't put it in this order? Can you do that? Can you connect Surah Al-Baqarah to Surah Al-Nas? The end of the end? No, because this is not the order of the Quran. And the Quran's order is from Allah, or is it from the ijtihad of the Sahaba? From Allah Azza wa Jal. The Quran's order is from Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay? Or if you keep repeating Bara'atu min Allah, the surah, like you keep repeating it like if you're hafiz, then you would pause each time instead of, obviously you cannot connect it. What about in the middle of surahs? Do you say Bismillah or you not say Bismillah? In the middle of surahs. You have the choice. In the middle of surahs you have the what? You have the choice. وَلَا بُدَّ مِنْهَا فِي ابْتِدَائِهِ كَسُورَةٍ سِوَاهَا وَفِي الْأَجْزَاءِ خَيَّارَ مَنْ تَلَى. You have the choice. You have the khiyar. What about in Surah At-Tawbah? Do you have the choice in the middle? Yes, you have the choice in the middle. In Surah At-Tawbah, can you begin with it? No. In the middle, can you begin with it? Third ayah, can you begin with it? Yes, because there's difference of opinion. Not difference of opinion, I mean you have the choice between the two. So that is the khulasa that I wanted to go over some of the ahkam. Now we'll just have one more statement of Imam Nawawi and we'll finish. So if one recites it, he says, most scholars consider the basmala a verse of the Quran since it is written in the text of the Mus'haf. If you look at the old copies, did they add the juz and the surahs and the ayah numbers? No, they did not. The old copies of the Mus'haf, did they have all of these details? No, but did they have basmala? Yes. So that's why they say, some of the ulama hold the position that it is part of the Quran. And again, like I said, there is some tafsil and it goes back to the Qurra. And has been written in the beginning of all chapters except Bara'ah. So if one recites it, he affirms the complete recitation of the Quran or a whole chapter. And if one omits it, then according to the majority of the scholars, he is neglecting a part of the Quran. What he's trying to say, Imam Nawawi here, rahimahullah, say Ameen, may Allah have mercy on him. We all want the reward of finishing the whole Quran, right? Yes. So he's basically saying, if you don't recite the Bismillah, according to many of the scholars, you've never finished the whole Quran. So if you're going to recite it, to leave the khilaf, then you should start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim to leave the khilaf, which is true. But even if you recite it in salah, then it's not like we're avoiding it, we're leaving it. You're reciting it silently. You're still reciting it though. Okay? If the recitation, this is a very important issue, and I remember you asked me about this. Can you hire someone to recite Quran for you? Let's say if I'm going to pass away, I'm going to hire a group of people to do khatma on my behalf. Is this allowed? This is allowed. You're doing waqf of people to do a khatma on behalf of you. Let's say you say $1,000 or $10,000 I set aside to a group of people, whoever they may be, a waqf, or if that ever exists, I haven't seen an example of it, where they're going to every week recite a Yasin on behalf of you. Yasin on behalf of you. Yasin on behalf of you, so that you're in your grave and inshallah the ajr yatik. Okay? So he says about this, Imam al-Nawawi, if the recitation is part of a service that involves wages such as reciting a seventh of the Quran or a third of the Quran or a 13th or a juz', a 30th, a juz' that comprises endowments and sustenance, a waqf or a ju'al, then so as to be certain, more care must be taken to read the basmala. Why? So as to be certain that the reciter deserves the wage he is taking. You're getting money to recite the Quran on behalf of the person who left it for you. Yes or no? Yes. Okay. To make sure that you deserve your wage, make sure you read the basmala. That's what Imam al-Nawawi is saying. To make sure you deserve that wage, make sure you recite the basmala. For if he left it out, he would not deserve anything from the endowment, according to the Shafi'i school of thought. According to those who say that Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is a verse at the beginning of the chapter, and then he completes it by saying, this fine point merits additional attention and prominence. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to benefit from what we heard. Everyone say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. بسم الله. تفضلوا.
Is it a long time between Adhan and Isha?